Welcome to webinar. This one's on Wi-Fi. We've got some members of our team here. So I have Julia, who's from the marketing departments and helps with the slides. And we have Paul Haggart, who's one of our techs in the background, who makes sure that we keep things going. And are there any particular questions you want solved by the time we finish the webinar? And we'll start by asking Jonah.
Well, I'm particularly using Wi-Fi in the context of live events.
Right.
So I'm just a little bit interested in actually just knowing if what kind of difference it's going to make to change our routers and our technology, and what kind of compatible hardware that we need in order to do that. So.
Well, you're very lucky because Storm has been doing live events. We started at Blues Fest. We did some special things with switches to make sure that anybody who was trying to stream automatically got dropped, so that the rest of the world could actually use the Wi-Fi. And of course, when we do Blues Fest, we used to do 5 different APs, but most of them were completely hidden, so the SSID was not published except for the public one. And so what we were able to do is put special scripts on them depending on what they were doing. So sound and lights was one, the front gate was another one. There was a lot of different things going on in that. So, and we know with live events, if everybody sees their favorite artist on the screen and wants to stream them at the same time, there's no way you can have that bandwidth. It's just impossible. 70,000 people trying to stream the same thing. Not a good experience. Anyway, our team is really experienced at doing that and would be happy to help you with that. Any other questions? Hilly, I hope I got that right.
No, just some general knowledge.
Okay. All right. No problem. And Mehdi.
I'm here just to listen about Storm IT and your Wi-Fi plans, just general knowledge.
Okay, all right. So first of all, we'll tell you a little bit about Storm, and then we'll go into the Wi-Fi presentation. So here we are. So thanks for being a Storm customer. Thanks for attending the webinar. We really do look forward to your questions and comments, and I know there may be some people that had some actual questions they wanted to get solved. So if any of those come up, then we'll be happy to help with those. This is actually our 9th webinar in the series, but we've covered Wi-Fi before. But we added some new information on Wi-Fi because Wi-Fi 7 is being published as a standard this year, and that will change a few things, and we'll talk about that. We've also covered SEO. We've done backup and recovery. We've done things on point-to-point wireless, including how that links into an area with point-to-point or point-to-multipoint, so fixed wireless access. And we've also done notes from the NOC, which was designed to help people actually understand how we support our commercial customers, and some things that you can do to help us out. So if you are a commercial customer of Storm, one of the things that's really useful is make sure that you go into the portal and update your authorized caller list, because that's important, so that when something does go bump in the night, somebody who calls in is actually an authorized caller at the time. Thanks. So we've been around since 1996, so more than 25 years. We have 3 offices, one in Perth, one in Chesterville, and one in Ottawa. Headquarters is in Ottawa. We have our own fiber and fixed wireless access. We own 262 towers across the Ottawa Valley, so we can bring internet to a lot of places without actually having to do anything other than add an antenna or a sector to one of our towers. We also have our own fiber. We have fiber in 2 areas right now. One is in Clayton. The folks around Clayton, about 400 of them, got fiber to the home and the businesses over the last few years. And we've also got another fiber installation in the VARS Business Park, or 417 Business Park area. So those are all our own what's called facilities-based distribution. So we distribute internet signal there. We also do TPIA, which stands for third-party internet access. It's the way that a lot of business is done. So we resell DSL, cable, and fiber. We're the largest, Bell's largest fiber reseller in the Ottawa area. We also work on making sure that we're up to date on all the equipment we have, and our customer service is local. We currently have more than 10,000 customers, and we provide both residential and commercial solutions. And during our build season, which is when we're building towers and adding points of presence and installing various things outdoors, we go up to over 50 employees. This is what our footprint looks like for wireless coverage. This does not include our DSL, cable, or fiber. This is just our wireless area. And if you notice on the far side, on the far right, there's a silver patch there. That's actually our new rollout, which is 100 down and 20 up. We rolled that out before Christmas, just to see how that would work, and we're now going to roll that out as people demand it across the rest of the area. All the little red dots are actually 5010, so we have a lot of areas where we can provide 5010 today, and this will update on a regular basis as the new options come available. And of course, you can always call in and ask if you're interested in getting internet connected in a certain place. So we do support events, as I mentioned, Blues Fest. We do Kempville Live. We do Hope Volleyball. We do a lot of country fairs. So we do the Chesterville Fair, the Mountain Fair. And in the municipalities, we not only do the light rail construction for Ottawa, we also support a number of meeting places in Ottawa. So for instance, if you've ever been to the Army Run and had to register in the Aberdeen Pavilion, it's our Wi-Fi that gets turned on for the event. And we deliver in the rural areas, especially industries in rural areas who need some bandwidth. So for instance, we have over 150 smart farms. We've done a lot of campgrounds and marinas. We support manufacturing in the rural areas. We do things with distribution and logistics, and of course tourism, which includes those county fairs that we talked about. So we're doing a lot of different things for that. The International Plowing Match kind of falls under that as well. Anyway, there's lots of stuff that we do that's not just straight delivery of a pipe to your building or your house. So we're going to talk about Wi-Fi today. Wi-Fi is based on a standard. So it's the 802.11 standard. This is the logo that the Wi-Fi organization uses, and we're going to talk about how that all has been rolling out over the last few years. Wi-Fi 4 was the first one that actually got a number and was mentioned to people, and it used two frequencies, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, and it had certain characteristics, which we'll see in a minute. Then there was 5, which only did 5 gigahertz. Then there was 6, which did 2, 4, and 5. And then there's 6E, which actually does 2, 4, 5, and in most cases will also include a 6 in the newer routers. And then Wi-Fi 7 is 2.4, 5, and 6 altogether. And there's a lot of new things that are done there to support new kinds of applications. For instance, AR and VR are among the things that Wi-Fi 7 was designed to help support. So you could, when you're working with a gaming console and you're in your virtual reality fighting the bad guys, you'll actually perhaps take advantage of some of the features that are there. So what does it actually mean? Well, according to Wikipedia, these are the generations. So nobody really counted 1, 2, and 3. They're really gone by now, because if you look at it, it's 2023 is over 20 years old. 11G is over 20 years old, and so we've got to start thinking about where you are in your Wi-Fi. So what do you have rolled out? And the little letter after is the difference between them. And those are not the only letters that exist for 802.11, but they're the ones that are used for access points. So as we said, in 2024, Wi-Fi 7 will get adopted. Right now, the routers are quite expensive, but they do have some increased ability to push a lot of bits at, and they do work on 3 frequencies. So then you get AX is what most current routers in the stores do, and so that covers a range of speeds. Interestingly enough, a lot of people would like the speed, but haven't actually thought about what does it take to feed that speed. So in this particular case, if you were to use an AX and you were going to try and push stuff at 9,608, which is what the spec says you can do, you need a 10 gig connection to be able to feed that. Most people don't have a 10 gig connection to their building or even their home. So just to if you are thinking about stuff, that's one thing. And once you get up into 7 and 8, you'll see there's even higher numbers, and you need to be able to, if you want the higher throughput to go to the internet, you actually have to be able to support it with the link to your house. So that's what people are working on today. For most places, the 2.4 spectrum is pretty filled up by neighbors, and so it's important to think about all those things. So because people are talking about 7 a lot, we went and looked at Tom's guide. So Tom's Hardware actually does benchmarks from time to time, and so your mileage may vary. So here they did 2 TP-Link modems and or routers, and at 15 feet, obviously it's more than 3 times the speed between the 7 and the 6. But when you get to 90 feet, the 6 actually beats the 7. So the question is, how far away from the access point are you actually going to be? And the other question I have is, what applications do you have that needs 1.73 gigs? So just a question for people to think about. And are you feeding stuff at 2 gigs to your building? Or is it all supposed to stay inside the building, which is possible. It might be that you're just replacing your wired local area network with a wireless local area network. So that's always possible. So just thinking about those things. Wi-Fi 8 is a spec that has been approved, and that spec is currently being worked through. It's due in 2028. So it's only another 4 years, and this will be real. But a couple of things that they can do channel allocation, so that you can pre-allocate a device that's always going to be on the networks. For instance, a printer, you could pre-allocate some bandwidth to them so that they always get that channel. You could, or maybe that channel is shared between these 3 printers. You can also do things with power management. So you could actually determine that this printer is only 4 feet away from the desktop that's going to be talking to it. So therefore, you can cut the power down so it doesn't send signal all over the building. And also, the new multi-point access coordination is going to automatically do load balancing. So while some routers today do load balancing, so they look at how many people are on a particular link, in the future, what you're going to see is it automatically built into the spec. And therefore, if there's too many people on a particular channel, it'll move people onto another channel, or maybe even another frequency. The ultra high reliability technology is something that's coming with millimeter wave. The idea is that in the industrial IoT specs going forward, you'll be able to have, say, a CNC machine sitting beside an AutoCAD machine, and the AutoCAD machine is firing over what needs to be done for the CNC machine to grind or build or whatever it's doing, and so that will be millimeter wave, and the objective is that it has to be extremely reliable with very low latency and jitter, and so all of that's part of what bringing that to bear to be able to do the factory of the future. There may be other devices that get there, but the factory people are actually looking at this. So you could have a wireless factory, and that would have the advantage of you could move stuff around without having to rewire the building. Of course, the question I always have is, are you going to have 100 gigs come into your building? Because that's what would be required to support it. They were thinking that would be the aggregate throughput. And then, of course, what's the application you have that actually needs these higher speeds? So, you need to get the speed you need. And we can talk about those along the way. So some of all this, when we started looking into it, delivered new vocabulary, TLAs, 3-letter acronyms that we had never seen before, and some of them even 4-letter acronyms. So MIMO is multiple input, multiple output. MIMO is multi-user with multiple input, multiple output. Why? Because they can use different channels. And then there's a thing called MLO, multi-link operation. So in Wi-Fi 7, you can actually do a bonding between the 3 channels. So you have a 2, 4, a 5, and a 6 gigahertz channels available, and it will actually go and grab multiple channels to be able to aggregate the transfer to get you through faster. So when it does come out, if you have some devices that need much higher transfer speeds, it's quite possible that you might find Wi-Fi 7 is a useful thing for that purpose. But basically, bonded frequencies being aggregated to move things along. Beamforming. So in order to they do signal processing in the router to figure out the signal to noise ratios. And what it does is it allows you to form a beam between that antenna and the destination. And so that's part of it. And also there's some time divisional multiplexing. So if we're sharing things, you get your turn, the next guy gets his turn, the next guy gets her turn. And so it just kind of pulls and changes it. Everybody gets, let's say, 5 milliseconds or something to send stuff. And it's all coordinated by the router based on what the load looks like. And auto load balancing comes in as part of things that people are looking at as well. So there are some new standards on the horizon as well. So in the 802.11 spec, the AZ is very fine timing measurement to understand exactly where things are positioned. Why? Oh, because we have vehicles, and some of those vehicles may want to drive you home after you've been out for dinner. So they need very, very precise location. And then the BD is for vehicle to vehicle, so it can actually say, hey, there's a traffic jam up ahead, and automate the process of telling the vehicle that that's happening. And then we have low power stuff, but it gets a longer range. So it uses low frequencies, goes way further, but also requires less power. And then there's this crazy thing, which was 6.7 gigabits using 60 gigahertz, but it only shoots 3.3 meters. So that's very interesting if you're driving, but not so interesting if you're in an office. For the most part, not everything's within 11 feet. And then we have the next gen 60 gigahertz, which will push 20 gigs per second with increased range and reliability. So these are all things that are already on the horizon. So when somebody is actually thinking about what do I want to do with my connections in my building, the question is, should it be a connection that is actually done now, or should you be waiting for some of this technology to roll out? So as you design things, and we'll help you with designs, you'll get to take a look at that and figure out how that all works for you. And I guess one of the things that people look at on access points is, what is security on an access point anyway? You've probably got more than one location that you connect to on a regular basis, and they probably have different SSIDs, and you may have something where as you walk through your building, you have to change your login, or perhaps people have got it right, and the login actually automatically hands off between one and the next. But that's all done by design. So understanding what's going on is important. So generally speaking, when you get a new router in, somebody's got to configure it to change the SSID away from the default and decide whether that SSID should be transmitted or not. It's sometimes handy to have hidden SSID so your neighbor can't try to poach your Wi-Fi. There's also the possibility that you're in a business, and you don't want people who are not authorized to be on your network to even know it exists. It'll just show up as hidden SSID. The network password, if it's not there at all, you need to add one, and if it is there, you want to change it. You certainly want to make it yours. Some of the routers now have more than one guest network available. So you can place guests on that network, but you can also place non-priority devices there. So for instance, you might decide that everybody's smartwatch could actually be a non-priority device, so that you can actually get the desktops and laptops to be a more priority. So that's a place to put things. So when you make a list of everything that might connect with Wi-Fi, the list is longer these days, especially at home. There's a lot of home devices that have showed up that we'll talk about in a minute, that really will be looking for Wi-Fi. So always change your admin password. So in addition to the password to access the router, there's always an admin password. And there's usually an administrator user ID and a password pair, and you really don't want to leave it as admin, which is what many of them are. You actually want to change that, because the configuration, once somebody has the configuration, they can do whatever they want. So you want to make sure that you do make that change. And most of the newer routers have the ability to do an access list by MAC address. So if it sees something that's not on the list, it can automatically drop it. So you can block by MAC address, or you can just say these are the only ones that are allowed to connect to this device. So either way, that kind of works quite nicely, because it limits where the traffic can actually come from. More on security. Once upon a time, wired equivalent protocol was put out there, and it's not exactly what the name said. It really wasn't that secure. And Paul, did you want to comment on any of this?
I could if you want. So
Sure.
WEP, the wireless wired equivalent, was cracked not immediately after it was released, but a couple of years afterwards. And what they found was that it essentially offers zero security if you know how to crack it. So shortly after that, they came out with WPA and WPA2. WPA is the different kind of encryption that goes between your device and your router. And they've just evolved the protocol multiple times now. So WPA got cracked, and then WPA2 is not really vulnerable right now. But there are some theoretical ways that in the future someone could decrypt your traffic if they were listening and monitoring it long enough. So then they came out with this WPA3, and if your devices support it, they'll automatically connect with it. And it's just an evolution of WPA2. There's nothing really to worry about with WPA2 currently, but they're, creating this new kind of encryption just to future-proof it so that they don't have to make a WPA4 in the future.
Right. And all of this plays into making sure that people can't monitor your conversations and see what your traffic actually is. And then one of the other things is if you want to be secure, you might VPN. And so you might be connecting to Wi-Fi in order to connect to your office. And when you connect to your office, you might want a VPN so that it's virtual private network on your behalf. So it's something to think about and put into your architecture if it's there. Interestingly enough, parental controls can be very handy. So there are offices that actually restrict by user or device. So the MAC address time, they may decide that certain kinds of content cannot be consumed during except at lunch hour or whatever, and so that can be put into the router. And you can decide anything that's not an age-appropriate website just doesn't get looked at from work. So all of that kind of thing can actually happen. And if you're at home, of course, limiting screen time might be something you want to do. You can also do time of day. So 10 o'clock at night is your actual cutoff. So all those kinds of things. You can also restrict people from going to certain websites. So no Amazon or nothing with in-game purchases. So you can actually get lists of those websites and put them in. And some people want that for their business as well as for home. This is where people think that Wi-Fi is unlimited. And what we want people to understand is Wi-Fi varies depending on which device you actually have. So you can get, as an example, with the A, it's only on 2.4. You can get 11 megabits per second, and you got a range of up to 150 feet. So 100 to 150 feet, the signal should have good integrity. When you move to the next one, which is the A in the 5 gigahertz range, although you can push 54 megabits per second, the range is shorter. The range is 60 to 100 feet. So that's something that people need to think about. How many meters are you going to be from the access point? And so people lay out buildings looking at where the heat map would be to get that kind of thing done. So different specs, IEEE specs, come back with different ranges and different speeds. So important for you to understand what kind of a footprint are you trying to feed today, and how many devices, where are the devices, and look at all that to figure out where do you put your access points and all those kinds of things. So that is always a question we get. How fast can I go on that? And the answer is you're always limited by your connection to your building if you're going off campus with it. But inside the building, so for instance, printing to a printer from your desktop, all of those things are in the building and don't have to go out to the internet to get there. And so it comes down to where are you going to put these access points? So you got to look at how many devices are in the building. Most places are bring your own device these days. A lot of them are anyway. So how many smartwatches, how many iPhones, how many tablets, how many Androids, all of the different kinds of devices that people could possibly have. How many of those are going to be present on the average day? And then how many of those can actually connect to an access point? We were looking at one of the specs the other day, and it says you can connect 64 users simultaneously. But then if you read the fine print, it says it can only service 15 of them at the same time. So part of this is to understand how many devices are you going to need, and therefore how many access points will you need to get good coverage. And perhaps by putting some of the stuff on the guest network so that it doesn't get priority might be a very good way of handling things. And also where you put your access point counts. So a lot of times access points are being put in attics or basements. Well, it turns out that once you're at 5G or 6G, the thing about those is that all of the walls interfere with the signal. So you have to count that as killing off part of the reach of that particular device. So I said we did events. We actually have an events trailer. The events. This is the events trailer set up at the ticket sales, which need to be able to use a stripe, right, and the ATM, and that's all at the front gate of the Kempville Live concert. And so this trailer contains the access points that we would deliver, and nowadays we can also pop up a TV with event specific content. At that event last year, I actually took a Wi-Fi analyzer, took screenshots of it, and here is on the 2.4. You can see that there's a bunch of different devices, including some hidden ones. And I didn't let the time graph run long enough, so the stuff on the right-hand side is just the beginning of the graphs, but it gives you an idea of what the signal level is for each of those devices at that particular point in time. And then you get to actually see what goes on in the 2.4 spectrum. So 2.4 has 11 channels, and those channels are well defined. But it turns out that 8 of the 11 channels overlap. So you need to be aware of that kind of thing. And so channel 1, channel 6, and channel 11 are typically what people actually use. So your neighborhood might be flooded on channel 6 or on channel 1, especially since that might be the default out of the Best Buy box. When you have your own commercial one, there may be other options, including setting the actual bandwidth that you get to use for that channel. So that's a big advantage to commercial grade routers. And then you can actually see in this case there's a whole bunch of stuff on channel 1. There's a truck, and then there's the guests. Those 3 different networks running differently. And then you get a little information on how good the actual signal from the access point is, what kind of an access point is it. So these ones are ubiquity. It also shows you information on what frequencies they're using and what channel they're on. So all of that's part of what you can get with Wi-Fi. With Wi-Fi analysis, we have several different Wi-Fi analyzers, including some to help us with design. Also in the Wi-Fi analyzer, we can actually give you which channel has how many devices connected to it. So that's useful because you can move your particular load onto a different channel sometimes to get better throughput. Some of the devices, more modern devices, some of those devices actually automatically pick a channel with lower contention and put you on that channel. But many of them you still have to go and manually do it, which might be a reason for doing an upgrade. As we were talking about earlier, Wi-Fi is a shared resource. Every access point can have a number of devices connect to it, assuming that we're starting at 5 and not with 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you're starting at 5, you've got 32 to 256 capacity is advertised. And then if you read the fine print, you may find how many they can do simultaneously. You can also find out what kind of traffic you're going to get with those devices. So you can actually sit there and say, okay, with a camera, if it's motion detect only, if it's compressed video, then you have this kind of bandwidth requirement versus full H.263 or 64. Those will have different specs for how much they need. And so if you have a lot of people nowadays, a lot of people might be on a video conference at the same time from the same building, or different video conferences. And so that means that you may need more up than you used to need before the pandemic. So that's something to think about, because the camera on your desktop or device will actually need uplink bandwidth as well. With TVs, you can do streaming. The question is, are you really going to get the best signal? It depends on interference. Your neighbors might be on the same channel, and that might interfere with yours. That's when you get the little circle in the middle of your page. Netflix actually optimizes for that, so they actually do a 3-1. So they need 3 down and 1 up. 1's for the control channel, 3 down is for delivering a 1080p. But if you actually decide that you're going to insist on taking the 4K or 8K, expect to have a lot different. So 4K is 16 megs per TV, and 8K is 64 megs per TV. So if you're planning an office with lots of TVs in it or large devices and you want them all wireless, you just need to do some math to figure out what you're going to need to make that work. Texting is intermittent, but when people attach pictures or maybe videos, obviously it has a burst of data that goes through. So you want to think about how many people are doing that kind of thing simultaneously on the floor that you're on. And then, and of course, email may have attachments. You also have device updates. Nice thing is your devices do update. The bad news is your devices do update. And so you have all of your devices, and included in that might be your router. So your router can actually go out to the net, see if there's an upgrade, which might be, you might want to do that for either performance or security reasons. So you can actually have it automatically go out and update itself. A lot of people turn that off, which means they may be like 5 or 6 or 10 patches behind, and then they want to do that. Paul, do you want to talk about devices and getting the patches updated?
I mean, as far as your devices go, you want to always keep them updated. They don't usually release software updates unless there's a good reason, because every time they have a massive user base that are patching their devices, there's a large opportunity that something goes wrong.
Yeah, and then the not only your devices but your routers as well. Routers and switches, they also have the ability to update.
Most of the time, in a newer router, yes, they'll self-update themselves, and oftentimes they don't even ask if you want to do that. They know that they have a critical update and they go out and get it themselves. But a lot of older devices, you have to actually go on the manufacturer's website and find the firmware for your device and figure out how to upload it and do all that kind of stuff. But it is important that these devices do get updated, because usually if there is some kind of vulnerability, it's usually a pretty critical one that would compromise the integrity of your whole network.
And we do offer that at Storm as a service, so that people can actually have us help them out with keeping things current. So, Paul, do we do switches and routers for customers?
We'll do anything that we sell them. Yep.
Okay. All right. Anyway, it's important for you to know that we will provide a service to keep things current, and to occasionally do a survey to see what you currently have. So an inventory, take a look at it and then figure out things about that. Then we have high volume. So on a shared Wi-Fi network, you might have NAS, network attached storage. A lot of people are replacing their wired LANs with wireless LANs, and it has a lot of advantages, but you also have to be aware that if somebody's reading and writing to a NAS all the time, and they're very big files like AutoCAD files, then there may be a lot of traffic because of that. So you might want to think about how you could put that particular device, people talking to that particular device onto a particular channel so that they won't interfere with everybody else. And printing can be the same. If you have, 5 printers across your floor, you might want to think about how you manage the printers wirelessly. And then there's IoT devices. So IoT devices come in all kinds of flavors. Some of them actually are doing temperature sensing, and something polls the temperature sensor and says, "What's my temperature now?" And other ones are only if it changes, or every 500 transactions. So while things change, every 500 transactions, it groups it all together and shoots it over. So that can also be part of what's going on. So on the interference side of the world, walls get in the way, electronics get in the way. So we end up with phones, lighting, microwaves, and even other Wi-Fis on the same channel. So there's interference, and you need to understand what interference is present. And then the internet connection that supports the router and the access points, what is that internet connection in terms of speeds, and how much traffic can you actually put through it, and how much actually exits the network and how much stays within the network. So those are all good questions when you're designing. Speed tests. Paul, do you have comments on speed tests?
Not especially. I mean, speed tests are a good test to see if your connection is working the way you expect it to. If you're paying for, 25 meg internet or 50 meg internet or whatever, and you do a speed test, you should get your 25 or 50.
Yeah, and what about doing it wirelessly versus doing it with a RJ45 jack plugged in?
I mean, it's important to do both. Having the wired connection will verify that you are capable of getting your full speed from your internet provider. And then when you switch to a Wi-Fi connection and test it, that will also test whether your home Wi-Fi is set up properly or not. If you get different speeds between the two, then there's something could be wonky with your Wi-Fi.
And also it depends on the distance from the access point.
That's true. You should do a speed test standing next to the Wi-Fi access point,
as well as from the place where you think you're going to be sitting.
Yes, exactly.
So if you're in an office, you're always going to be 70 feet away at your desk, and with dividers, so for your cube, you might just want to make sure that from there what the expected speed's going to be. You can use a known app. So there's a bunch of different speed test apps. What's the one? Okla. I think that's the one that I've seen a lot.
Yeah, Oakley is the standard one, speedtest.net.
Yeah, and that's something that people can use to test their speed wherever they are. Speed has parameters. Most people actually understand speed down and speed up, which is the 50-10, 50 down, 10 up. And actually that brings up a point. We are actually rolling out 50-20 because of the number of people working from home. We found that a lot of customers need to have the 20 in order to support the cameras that are involved. Anyway, it's up, down, and then there's jitter and latency, and those are also measures which show up when you're actually doing a video conference. If there's a delay between the time you actually say something and the time that it actually it gets transmitted, then it gets noticeable. Not quite as bad as the over a satellite effect, but you can still get jitter and latency in the way. Some of the applications, like cameras, video calls, need 3 to 5 up per device that's using them. We find that Teams needs 6 for some reason. But anyway, 4K 16 to 25 megabits per second to play in high definition. And then your smart office or smart home devices, they also need bandwidth. So if you've got a Nest to manage your temperature, if you've got a Ring to get the doorbell with a video, if you've got a fridge that's internet connected. I went out shopping for dishwashers, and they were trying to persuade me that I needed Wi-Fi for my dishwasher. It's an option. I have not turned it on. But apparently it's so that they can dispatch somebody if your dishwasher breaks down. If it breaks down, I can call somebody. And then, of course, lights. Turns out lights, internet managed lights, actually produce a lot of interference. So it's something that people ought to think about when they're doing stuff, is to remember that the lights may be causing interference for your access point. So perhaps keeping them on the guest network is a good thing to do. And also, while you're there, smartwatches, Fitbits, tablets, cell phones, baby monitors, cordless phones, they all contend for Wi-Fi, and many of them on 2.4. So even though 2.4 gets a signal that penetrates better, if you have all these things contending for it, then you might want to consider that. And that includes, like in your building, if you're a commercial customer and you're looking at this, all of those things are also contending. I was reading an article from a guy who actually wired his house, and his objective was to have 2 wired points in every room, so that he could change the room around if he wanted to, rather than it just being stuck forever. And since he was wiring his own house, he got to use it. He actually used between Cat 6 and fiber, he used 7 kilometers of cabling in order to wire everything with 2 access points everywhere, plus the garage with multiple access points, plus plus outside. Although he did say that he didn't get his deck done properly, because he would really like to be able to use Spotify on his deck, and he didn't actually have enough bandwidth to run it at the kind of fidelity that he wanted to. So think about where your smart TVs might be. Think about where your printers would be. Or if you're wiring for home, do you have game consoles? Do you have Blu-ray, DVD players, etc.? So those things can be plugged directly in and deliver their signal to the other device without going wirelessly. So in most cases, Blu-ray, DVD players, there's no reason why they can't be plugged into the nearby TV. If you can, it avoids interference that's going to come from that device. Your router needs to be able to support your internet connection speeds. We rolled out starting 4 years ago. We started to roll out GPON, which is gigabit passive optical networks. And when we started rolling those out, people's had home routers that weren't capable of going up to a gig. So it's important to understand the internet speed that your router is capable of. And meshing can solve your dead zones. So if you have some dead zones, you can extend your range by doing things with meshing. And our rule of thumb is always locate your router well, so that so people can connect from wherever they are in your building. So, and then smart buildings. So building management systems can save between 15 and 50% of usually the energy costs. There's the security for your building can be done. You can do HVAC, so all of your air conditioning and the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, all of that can be done. The temperature sensors, IoT for various different things, including detecting if anybody's actually on the floor. So that can be good, making sure that the HVAC stays on while people are still present and then turns off when they've left. There's a lot of stuff going on with water recycling now, where people are recycling rainwater to use for various things like watering flowers and keeping the lawns green. So there's a lot of those kinds of things, and there's health benefits to the occupants to getting it right. Different kinds of wired or wireless are available, so if you're designing a building from scratch, your architect will know a lot about this, and we always suggest you get it wired up really well, and think about what it looks like over the next couple of years to make sure you have the access points where you need them, including the wired access points. Video conferencing. Not only do you need cameras in the room and perhaps a large monitor and a large whiteboard that's internet connected, but you also should think about the room booking system. How's that going to happen? You can take a look at hoteling, which is desk booking, so different people can book a desk in your organization. And you want to take a look at managing it all from a single pane of glass if you can. And a lot of this will rely not just on internet but Wi-Fi, because a lot of this can and should be wireless. So those are the kinds of things that people are looking at these days. If you're looking at some of those, we'll be happy to take some questions and give some answers.
There was only one, actually. There was one thing that occurred to me. You were talking about the traffic monitoring software, where you can, with a higher end router, you can then regulate your bandwidth and get a better idea of what's being used and how to allocate your resources on your various bands. And you were talking about how in consumer level, like, that's not always available. Do you know of a third party program that you could use with a consumer router alongside it?
Well, let's ask Paul that question.
I unfortunately do not. I don't know of a home router that would be able to do that kind of thing.
But the professional level ones that we do allow you to look at the bandwidth and allocate it appropriately on the higher end ones.
Yes, absolutely. If you're willing to go to kind of like a prosumer kind of thing, there's a software package called pfSense that you can install on whatever hardware it supports. There's different routers that it supports that you can install it on, and that software in particular is modular and lets you add and remove features as needed. And a couple of the features that it supports is very good QoS support. It uses something called Codel, CODEL, which is it's a quality of service protocol that tries to minimize jitter and latency, but only on packets that actually are affected by jitter and latency. So it's like a really smart version of QoS, and it's built right into pfSense.
Okay, and so one of my questions for that kind of thing is this available in the open source router management software that sometimes people are able to get for their router?
Yes, for sure. pfSense is open source, and it's used by many people around the world.
Right. So that is one way of getting certain features, and many routers now are pfSense capable, right?
Capable, yeah. Like the hardware itself can be, you can take off what the manufacturer put on there and put pfSense on there. The other one to look into is something called OpenWRT. And
Yes.
that's another open source router software that can overwrite the manufacturer's software and put their own compatible software. And it gives you so many options for what you can do with your router that you couldn't do before, just because it's able to use open source software and add on packages to your router.
And in that case, if you're actually using that, you do have to make sure that you've figured out how to keep it updated.
Yes, pfSense and OpenWRT are not for newbies. They are a pro level operation, and they do so much more than a regular router.
Okay. Did that fully answer your question, Jonah?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Hilly, what do you think?
A great presentation and great to hear you talk about, and it was in the back of my mind, but it's a good reminder about how everything adds up to your bandwidth use.
Yep.
And also I use pfSense, and there's lots of hardware you can buy with it pre-installed. It's great software. So I'll concur with your other answer.
Okay.
Thanks for everything.
No problem. Mehdi, what do you think?
Actually, that was a great presentation. It answered some of my questions. We do serve hospitality, and we deal with lots of different devices with different generations, from legacy to most modern ones. And it makes it very complicated, especially for security. We cannot use all the top level security because legacy devices, they just get rejected. The presentation was good, was informative. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm glad you got something out of it. Thank you very much for attending, and we will have another one in a couple of weeks. We do Wi-Fi surveys as part of what we do, and from that we can then figure out how to provision and configure routers and access points for you. We have people that do this for a living all day long, and then we can also help design for your access points. So to say this is what you'd need to do to support that bandwidth inside your building. So especially commercial. And if you need better Wi-Fi, you can always drop us a note at info@storm.ca, and somebody from info will take your message and start working with you. So thanks again for coming out. We really appreciate it. If you have a particular topic that you'd like to see us present, this is a continuing series, and we keep adding things to it. So if there's anything that you would like to see, please do drop us a line. Marketing@storm.ca will get it into the marketing department, and they'll try to get it into the list. We're growing our business. We appreciate all the things that customers give us for suggestions, and we have a program for leads. And just let us know how we can help you, which lets us all grow. So really appreciate it, and thanks very much for coming out.